Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's LinkedIn Live webinar. To introduce myself, I'm Kieran Holmes, the Direct Client Sales Manager at Fingerprint. Bit of background, I've been working in the compliance-focused RegTech space for a few years now. During this time, I've seen the growth in the adoption of tech to help compliance officers and their teams manage obligations. Being involved in the sort of selling side of RegTech is very interesting. There's a conversation surrounding pain points that compliance teams face, and then the education on how technology can actually help with these challenges and add value. Please remember that throughout this, you can ask questions. Please drop it in any questions in the message chat, or DM Brielle Hewitt. I'm sure you know the name. She's been reaching out to you, trying to get you along to this event, and she will pass those on to us to answer later on. So right now, I've introduced myself, and I will hand over to James Hogbin, who will introduce himself.
Hi, my name's James Hogbin. I'm the founder of Fingerprint. I've spent several years working in regulatory IT for some of the largest regulatory consultancies and regulatory hosts. Prior to that, I was a CTO for a number of fairly major hedge funds. So I've sat on both sides of the fence. Oh, that's confusing. I put up my left hand, it came up on the right. I'm in mirror. I've worked for a number of hedge funds, so I've worked both on the IT side. I've been a regulated person under the FCA and worked within the compliance area, specifically within IT supervision for the last 10 or 12 years.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, James. So clicking onto this next slide, if you could take it away, James.
So what we're going to cover today is what good looks like when it comes to communication supervision. And I feel quite strongly about this, obviously running a supervision company and dealing with it day on day, that policy is everything. The fact that compliance is a policy-driven environment, the fact that if you've got a policy, you know where to start looking, the fact that if you have a policy, then everything you do can be referenced and managed and tracked against that policy. So primarily, we Communications 101 policy, and I'll dive into what a good policy looks like in a little bit. The second thing that is really important is an integrated compliance estate. So there are a number of things that compliance people have to do. They have to attest to various bits and pieces. They have to look for PA dealing. They have to ensure that the sales that's being done under their name is appropriate. They have to sign off marketing materials, and everything needs to be integrated, whether it be at the system level or, more importantly, the policy level, so that as the business and the regulator looks at compliance departments, they say you're joined up. So Communications 101, it needs to be part of a joined up compliance estate. And finally, there are a number of different tools that you need to put in place to make things easy. There is no point fighting against your compliance tools when you are policy driven, because the policy should take precedence to everything else. So as you go through your day-to-day, you should have a seamless logon. You should have translation at your fingertips. You should be managing in an exception managed basis rather than on a random search basis and all of that sort of stuff. So hopefully this afternoon, I'll talk you through a few bits and pieces, and then Karen and I will just do a little question and answer, and anything that you want to feed through in terms of questions, we're all ears. Karen.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. So creating a sound policy framework. So in general, but more so in the past few years, there's been a huge shift towards and reliance on technology, which has certainly made it more complicated to oversee and monitor the risk in any business's communications. There's also the flip side to that, Now there is a lot of technology out there in the market that gives us better options to meet these challenges of managing risk well. James, thinking and talking about communication supervision specifically, I guess firstly, how important is it to have a good supervision policy? And then how can technology not replace a policy, but supplement it?
So those are both very good questions, and hopefully I'll be able to offer up some insight to them. In terms of the policy sets out the domain that you're looking at. So they're creating the field of play, if you like, for what compliance people are looking for, able to look for, under what circumstances and whatever. So a good communications supervision policy, or a good supervision policy, because there's more to supervision than just communications. There's market data, there's mass mail detection, there's marketing presentation capture, there's LinkedIn supervision. So within supervision, you need a policy that covers all aspects of compliance supervision within it. So, and we have, quite frankly, we will share a good reference policy. So if you'd like a policy, just ping Kieran or Brielle an email, and we will send you a sample supervision policy that will effectively cover you for all of this stuff. But at the highest level, what a policy does is it defines what you're looking for. What sort of activities are you as a compliance department most concerned about discovering? Is it mis-selling? Is it client conduct? Is it market manipulation? Is it PA dealing? Is it graft? Is it all of them? And to what depth? So first off, you need to define what you're looking for, because that drives all other actions. Once you define what you're looking for, you can then define where to look for it. Are you going to be looking in LinkedIn? Are you going to be bringing WhatsApp into the managed environment? My recommendation, don't do it. Have a policy that says no WhatsApp, because it's expensive and difficult to do. But you can if you like. So you, as a compliance department, know the different channels across which you will need to supervise. And those channels can include your trading channel, your what's the thing, SurveyMonkey channel, your MailChimp channel, because all of these different channels exist in your business for different areas of what you're doing. And as a compliance person, especially under SIS 10A, you need to be capturing and supervising all of them. So we've decided what we're looking for. We've decided where we're looking for it. Once you've got the basics, that's your corpus of data that you're supervising, you then have to have a think about how you would like to risk profile it. Now, generically, there are 2 or 3 different ways of doing this. You can do a Boolean search across all of the data and see if you can find single items within that data that are of interest. You can relevance match it against a pattern. So if you're looking for a spoofing within your trading patterns, you can look for a spoofing pattern or a back off algo that's going on in your level 2 order book. Or you can look for patterns of communication, people saying things like, call me, when they're in email, because why would they want to have a telephone conversation when they're quite happy in email and Teams? Things such as switching languages halfway through a chat channel. So if you're in Bloomberg and talking in English, and suddenly 2 people start chatting in French, those sort of things may be a stuff that you want to risk profile. And as you do risk profile, you have to work out what is high, medium, and low in terms of risk. Because under your policy, once you've set that, it's very easy to take whatever it is and say, that's a high, our policy says a high, and therefore we deal with it this way. So we've got a policy that's saying what we're looking for, where we're looking for it, and the suspicions and how we're going to rank it. What that gives you is a list of potentially risky items, which you as a compliance department then need to triage. So much like arriving at a busy A&E on a Saturday night, the doctors there will be deciding who needs attention immediately and who can wait to sober up and be seen in 6 or 7 hours. So that triage process also has to happen in your data. Now, this is where the market has moved with technology considerably in the past few years. When I used to work at hedge funds, it was all about random sampling. We would go into the email corpus, randomly sample some emails, send it to the compliance person, and that was supervision done. That is perhaps the worst way of discovering anything at all going on in your email, but that was state of the art back then. What's state of the art now is that everything gets looked at, everything gets analyzed, and everything gets risk ranked to put onto your triage list when it hits a certain risk score. Now, that risk score can be generated by the trading system, by your marketing system, by analyzing your LinkedIn data or call patterns or whatever. So once it's on the triage list, you need a policy about how you deal with it. For instance, if you're a compliance person, are you going to go in and deal with everything on your triage list above a score of 8 every week? Are you going to take the top 10 items a day and look at them? So effectively, your policy will state, I'm going to deal with my risk rank list in this manner. So that as you go through week on week, month on month, year on year, you can see whether your triaging is actually helping you identify wrongdoing as part of your supervision, identifying training opportunities for your staff, or it's just a bust and you need to change what you're doing. So once you've triaged your items and you've gone through your process of identifying the items to look at, and you're looking at them once a week, and you're clearing down the top 10 every week of the most suspicious, one of them maybe is suspicious enough to then investigate. And so your policy needs to say how you will investigate that issue, because you want it to be a repeatable process. The regulator would like to look at you and say, we know that you've got this complete, lovely front to back process where you know what you're looking for, you know how you're looking for it, and if you find something, you deal with it in a proceduralized manner to discover whether it is something that we should be notified about or not. So once you've triaged an item and you need to take action, then what you need to have is a policy that says, we will take these certain activities, whether it's a workflow that has an investigation, a review and a sign-off that happens at different points and with different people. You need to have that documented, what you do in each stage, what the investigation is, how it then finishes an investigation and goes to review. Once it's reviewed, how it's reviewed, and then signed off. And you need to demonstrate repeatability with all of those steps. A policy isn't really a policy in any area of compliance without some form of key performance indicator and reporting against that key performance indicator. So typically within a communication policy, your KPIs will be along the lines of, we will scan 99.95% of all communications. We will identify risky items within 3 days of the communication running through our system. We will have triaged the top 20% of risky items within a month of them being discovered. We will hit a investigation policy with the investigation taking place within 5 days of identifying the item. And all of those KPIs add up to a policy that's living. So you can report on those KPIs to say, yeah, look, we've got this policy. We said we'd do this. We said we'd triage it. We said we'd investigate it. And actually, tick, 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 here we are. Or we're slipping a little bit on this because we're suffering a tsunami of data, maybe because we've misidentified what we're looking for, or potentially we've got some bad activity going on that we were unaware of. And a bullet point that's missing off this bullet point list is the regular review. The FCA are very keen to remind us in their market watches that everything needs to be kept up to date, specifically the last couple of market watches ago, where they were talking about market supervision and saying that a load of people put in a load of systems, but unless they're kept up to date and present, then they're not useful for the purposes of identifying misbehavior. And likewise, your policy needs to have a regular review. Are the terms that you're searching for within the policy set out correctly? Are the communication channels you're searching over correct? Is the triage process that you're undertaking the right one for your business at that time? Are the KPIs actually reporting back what you want in terms of management information about the process? So the review process needs to be undertaken on a periodic basis, and the periodic read probably quarterly for what you're looking at, probably annually for the KPIs and the processing bits and pieces, so that you can say our policy is a living and appropriate policy. Now, there are a whole load of vendor solutions in the space. Some of them are really, really very good at doing what they do, which is identifying things. However, as a compliance person, I would argue that you should be more concerned about your policy. What is supervision and what does it mean to you as an organization, as a compliance person? That policy is your day-to-day battle card as to how you go into the business to do supervision. And it's no use having a product over here that is blazingly fast at identifying things if you can't get your KPIs out of it, if you can't get your investigations through it, if you can't integrate it on a machine level with your market data, your market supervision, your dashboarding system, your marketing review system. Because unless all these systems talk to each other, you as a compliance person are logging into a dozen different systems. You're keeping your investigation in paper notes, or even worse, in your email file. There is no consistency of scoring across the systems. There's no consistency of policy implementation between what you're doing in terms of looking for spoofing, in terms of what you're doing in terms of checking that the marketing that you've signed off is actually leaving the building in the format that you said it was going to or should do, with the risk warnings in 17-point red bold rather than white on white and 2-point, as marketing people like doing. And you as a compliance person are trying to arbitrate all the different systems. So think on when you're buying a system, because your policy should be driving everything you're doing, and the system should slot into your policy rather than your policy adjusting to whichever system it is. So at the highest level, that's the policy framework that we suggest. So in summary, it's defining the rules for the entire supervision within your business. Com supervision is just part of it. There are other bits of supervision. Define what to look for, define where to look for it, how you profile it, how you triage it, how you process stuff, how you report your KPIs, and how you review it regularly. As I say, we've developed a process to help people, and you're more than welcome to take a copy and modify it into your compliance area, because what we find often as we go into prospect situations is the supervision is a couple of lines within the compliance handbook. Now, that doesn't really work anymore. There's much more to supervision than there used to be when the compliance handbooks were handed out like confetti by compliance consultants. So hopefully you'll find that little bit useful. Kieran, did that answer the couple of questions that you had at the top, do you think?
It did very well. Thank you, James. I just want to reiterate one of those points. Any reg tech or technology for anything across compliance, it shouldn't necessarily be absolutely replacing what you have already. It's supplementing it and allowing you to just do a slightly better job, I suppose. And James, you mentioned earlier integration again across compliance estate. Are you able to talk us through that now?
Yeah, so integration is a really important issue, because as RegTech compliance tech, fintech, tech gets a foothold within businesses, there is a real disincentive to log in with MFA and a dongle to one system and then have to try and copy the data to the next system via a spreadsheet or a Word file. If you want to translate the content of something, copying it and pasting it and copying it back again, then putting it all into a SharePoint or some form of case management that's different. So you have to export something from one system, put it into another. And that's not compliance. That's sort of nerd tech, right? It's really regressive to have multiple different systems in their silos, all of which are very good, all of which solve the problem in their domain, but they don't talk to each other. And so in terms of good tech, whether it be reg tech or any tech, it talks to each other. And it talks to each other largely without human beings having to copy and paste. So the Control-C, Control-V type approach to integration, you shouldn't accept that. Everything should integrate with everything else. You should log in once, maybe twice. The data should flow. If you've got an alert in one system, you should be able to say, I'd like that alert in that system. You should be able to grab a bit of case data from one case management and put it into another system. Now, from the ground up, we've got an API. So for us, it's just, yeah, why wouldn't you? But a lot of legacy tech relies on exporting to a CSV and making sense of it and the rest of it. And I think if you're putting in good communication supervision, good policy approach, you want your systems to talk to one another. At the end of the day, from a compliance dashboarding thing, you want to look at all your KPIs, be that, have we had the entire employee estate attest that they've signed the compliance handbook? Have we got all of the PA dealing in? Is the marketing sign-off going correctly? Is the communication supervision kicking stuff out that we should be looking at? Is the market supervision kicking stuff up? How is the AML process going for the onboarding? How is the KYC going for the new accounts that we're setting up? All of that needs to be on a dashboard with traffic lights for the compliance department to go, hang on, we've got an issue over here. We need to drill down into that, without then having to go, oh, and now I need a dongle for Miggins to log into system X and look at this bit of information. So good supervision presages the fact that the entire environment is, as far as possible, integrated with one another.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, James. And this is across your whole compliance estate, but something we pride ourselves on is centralizing the communications channels. So having each channel, whether that be email, Teams, Bloomberg, Zoom, all in one space. And as you said, not having to log into different things. Different things can be your KYC, your AML platform. And in our scenario, they can also be your different archivers and where you monitor certain communications channels. So just moving on to this next slide, everything that James has described can be managed and run within our compliance technology platform, Fingerprint Supervision. So how can we help? We have built a product that does what you want and what you need to oversee and manage the risk within your business communications effectively. I've just mentioned the centralizing of channels into one place, the ability to then risk rank all of those channels, as I said, in one place. And then also James talked about the reporting and KPIs earlier, and our platform Fingerprint allows you to do that in a succinct way. James, if you could talk a little bit more about this as well.
Sure. If I could we step back to the last slide, do you think?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So what we have here is a list of all of the bits and pieces that you could have an individual system for, or could be things that you're looking for within your supervision. Now, quite often they overlap, and you as a compliance person get to choose, do I want to do my supervision in a number of different places, or do I want to do my supervision in one place across a number of different domains? Now, you're a compliance person, not an IT person. And if you choose to do stuff in a number of domains, so you're going to log into Bloomberg to look at Bloomberg messaging and Bloomberg Tradebook, you're going to log into TT to look at the trading records, you're going to log into I don't know, the phone system to listen to the phone calls, you're going to look at your LinkedIn Navigator to see what's going on, or the CRM where you're picking up all of the outbound marketing. Actually, what you're turning yourself into is a hybrid IT compliance person. And you shouldn't have to do that. As a compliance person, your value to the organization is being able to put in context all of these different channels, be it PA dealing or sales appropriateness, and understand where the risks are to your business from a compliance perspective, rather than being an expert in system X for marketing reviews and how you do your searches within that, which is different from the search terms and the case management that you may well have in your employee conduct oversight. So the choice to be made within your organization is DIY, systems-based, or policy-based. Now, DIY is very popular. Most of the people that we walk into and start talking about this stuff, and we say, so have you got any systems? And pretty much it's, no, we spend 2 days a week looking through people's stuff to see if there's anything suspicious there. And that stuff can be the end of day trading reports. That stuff can be the marketing materials. That stuff can be the CRM or Power BI dashboards based on employee movements. But what we find is that there's an awful lot of, yeah, we just thought we'd give that a go and see what would happen, and we're kind of stuck in that rut now. And so, to be clear, good communication supervision is about how that fits into your policy. So all of these different areas, we would suggest you have the policy that covers how you want to do these, and then the system in place that allows you to risk identify in one place, so you don't have to hop about and do things, and then case management and KPI manage it in the same place again, so that you've got one front end that deals with all of these back end systems, so you don't have to think about them too much. Sorry, if we now go to the next slide that I haven't started talking about yet. So in terms of where we are as a vendor, we were born out of a company called Mirabella, which is now part of the ACA group. And they had a very specific problem. They had to undertake communication supervision across a large number of underlying firms who all had their own little data lake, but Mirabella needed to see across all of them for their account managers. And it is a slightly nerdy corner of the market, but the FCA has just reviewed the authorized representative sector, is splitting apart regulatory hosts from principal firms, and coming round to the idea that supervision needs to take place across all of these different areas. Now, because that's our heritage, we have multi-tenancy at our core. So we're able to do all of this supervision at quite a low actual cost to the end client. Secondly, because Mirabella is a regulatory host and it is renting out its regulation to its clients, it is really very good at identification of risk, at management of risk, of managing cases through, of triage. And so, having worked with them for 8 or 9 years, our system has got very good at being able to do very flexible triage, very flexible case management, because that's how regulatory hosts run their business. Finally, because regulatory hosts aren't really in control of the firms that come to them systems, obviously they're in control of their policies and procedures because they're setting them. But any old firm could turn up with Gmail or with Bloomberg or with Zoom or with a phone system, and the regulatory host is going to have to ingest that data. So we've got vast experience of different data ingest channels to bring into a consistent system to allow that analysis and supervision to take place. The other thing that we've had to do as part of the ACA family, as Mirabella are, was integrate with the other bits and pieces of that. So we have written our software to be as integratable, it's not really a word, but you get what I'm trying to say, with other systems as humanly possible. So everything that we do can be done on a machine-to-machine basis. And we have a number of partnerships with order management systems, with trade surveillance systems, with dashboarding systems, with compliance automation systems that can just plug into the data that we control and can either do some searches across the communication channels and risk ranking, or can use our triage and risk management and policy-driven approach to manage the signals that they're generating. So for us as a RegTech provider, and with our heritage of having to do a difficult thing for the preeminent, or one of the preeminent regulatory hosts in the UK, we've provided all of the tools that hopefully make it easy to do good supervision. So to the lines on the chart, everything is driven by a policy. Everything has to be formalized in what you're looking for, where you're looking for it, how you're risk ranking it, what you're doing with it when you've got it, and the regular review of it. Because it's important, because you get marked on your policy. And your policy should, if followed, give you good results. Where it all goes wrong is you freelance on the policy and do some searches and it doesn't work. So everything is policy driven. Integration has to be at the core. You need to be able to pick up signals from your trading system, from your marketing review system, from your PA dealing system. We've caught a number of bad actor front office trading sort of people from their PA dealing forms where they haven't quite been straight with what they're doing. And we've taken a machine to machine, bang, do a search, off you go. That's where it is. The choices that you make in your policy should configure everything that you're doing. So as you're going through your policy framework and saying, we're looking for this type of activity, then that should automatically generate it. There's experience in the vendor space. Each vendor has come up with a great product. There are a whole load of them. We know the domain. So if you're looking for KYC breaches, talk to the vendor, what's the best way of finding it? But it needs to be automatically driven by the policy that you have. So as you're doing your policy, the system needs to be aware of that. For the workflow of your compliance staff, things should be exception driven now. Gone are the days where you have to go out and seek the data manually, doing the random search across email, having a look at people's LinkedIn, searching through Twitter feeds, just to generate some data to then triage, to then process. So wherever possible, supervision should be exception managed. So let the tech take the donkey work and the time and the, oh God, I've got to search through a whole load of people's emails, and that's never great because you can't unsee some of the emails that you get to see when you're searching. And the system will just present it back to you and say, here are the 10 things you should look at. You've given me some rules to go away and find information. Have a look at these. If you've got market signals and you're worried about spoofing, then you know the pattern of bid-ask traffic that you have to program in as a signal to say, if I see this, I think you should identify that as spoofing. So the fact that you are now exception driven makes you a much more efficient compliance department because you're not sourcing the data. You've left that to the machine. In terms of what you then do as a consistency of approach needs to go across all systems. So once you've set up your policy framework, you need to remorselessly go through and follow that framework. So you want every piece of your supervision and extended compliance dashboard to be driving that activity back to the policy so that you're able to say to the regulator or to your investor due diligence panels as you seek money or seek relationships with prime brokers or big vendors, that this was the policy, this was the activity, here were the KPIs, and here is the proof that we did what we said we were going to do. And so every little bit of the chain needs to feed back and enable you to report on a consistent process. That also means your scalability is much better. So if you buy a new sales team, if you buy a new trading desk, if you launch a new product, then your scalability of we can get some more resource into this because we're exception management driven. So the resource will only deal with stuff that are exceptions. And secondly, there is a process to follow throughout this. So there's a consistency of result, whether it's a brand new product area or an existing product area that you've had for years and years and years and years. That's all backed up with your reporting and KPIs. Two purposes for that. Number one, you're a compliance department. You're always on the back foot. You're always at cost. Everybody hates us. That's just life. So the systems that you put in and the policies and procedures that we have need to demonstrate to the business what a bang up job we're doing. We are on it. We are looking and keeping the business out of trouble. Now, we're keeping the business out of trouble by identifying early risk areas that training and culture work can mitigate before they become issues that actually have to be dealt with in any form of sanction. So a lot of the supervision systems that we set up are to help compliance departments work out where training is lacking. Do we need some training in what is an acceptable relationship to form with a client? Do we need some training in how best to undertake sales activities via email and chat? Do we need to do some training in terms of product because it seems that our salespeople are accidentally mis-selling? So using supervision correctly enables you as a compliance department to say, we're out in front of this. Here are the reports. Here's where the traffic's going. Can we get some targeted training? Can we get some consultancy around this? Can we maybe change a process here? Because if this line carries on going that way, then we will be in trouble. And that's much more acceptable to the management teams that exist within finance businesses because they live on data. And it enables you to turn a compliance feeling into a compliance fact, into a board presentation that's very easy to defend, to keep the size of team that you've got, expand your team, or get in the more resources that you need because you can show where things are going. So we've got the actual reporting and trending, and then we've got the KPIs, because time after time you will be audited. And there is nothing worse than an audit for which you are not prepared. It's a flurry of paperwork. George in accounts is always off and he's got the investigation email in a folder on his desktop and you can't get to it. So having all of the KPIs and the data to hand to say, here is our policy, Mr. Investor Due Diligence. Here are a few example cases. Here are the KPIs that we hit. Look at this. We've only exceeded our KPI 1 month out of 12, and the next 11 months we were way underneath where we were. So on average, we're doing well. And it's data like that that makes the investor due diligence brigade nothing to see in the compliance department. They're well managed. We'll go and have a look at everything else. So you don't stand out. You do a good job. Therefore, you're not an area of concern. And finally, the concern of most COOs, Chief Compliance Officers, as Chief Operating Officers, God, confused about that. Chief Operating Officers' major concerns is shutting the entire thing down in 6 or 12 months. And they spend their entire time honking on about how come Bloomberg has a 2-year term. Now, everything that we do is cloud-based, cloud-native. It takes a drop copy of existing information, so it coexists with all of your present bits and pieces that you're doing. And again, this is important. A lot of finance is about managing your cost, obviously. And the move to the cloud is now permitted by the FCA. It wasn't until sort of 2017 when they issued a paper saying it was fine. And now there are massive cost advantages to going to cloud-based vendors rather than on-premise based vendors. So when you're looking for your compliance dashboards and your internal data, it's perfectly fine to go for cloud-based environments. The caveat to that being that it needs to coexist with everything that you currently have. If you do have some on-prem mail servers or some on-prem web servers or whatever, then everything needs to plug in. So good communication supervision is an entirely integrated system, probably in the cloud, because that's where it's cheap. That's where you can get the term-based contracts that your COO is looking to implement for the business. And also at the larger end of clients, the scalability you can get from being cloud host far exceeds anything you can get on-prem. And we have had clients that have taken on a new desk. Their Bloomberg messaging has jumped from 780 Bloomberg messages in a day to, I think it was 35,000 Bloomberg messages in a day. We didn't even notice. The system just carried on working because that's the benefit of being a cloud-hosted solution. Again, to the compliance person, what does that mean? It means it's quicker, it means it's easier, it means it's cheaper, it means it's better integrated with the policy whole. Those are those bullet points. How cool is that?
Thank you, James. And in the last couple of minutes, I get to quickly talk about some cool features of Fingerprint that our platform has, and the bits I like to talk about. So I'm gonna kick it off with translation. We are a multilingual searching platform. We can translate to and from 75 languages, covering all possibilities. And one thing our clients really love is the threading of conversations. So during an investigation of potentially suspicious communication, the Fingerprint platform has the ability to pull together an entire conversation, put it in order, and let you know which sections of that are the potentially suspicious, email, Bloomberg, whichever channel it might be. And then once you've decided that a piece of communication needs investigating further, you can actually incorporate outside documents into a case. So you add it to a case and you can add outside documents to the case. And this means that users can add case notes, attach documents, attach URL links, keeping everything relevant to that one case in a single space, meaning you don't have to go off onto emails and keep track of the case in another system. Masking of personal information is always a big thing, especially with GDPR rules. When a user clicks into a communication item, all of the personal identifiable information, such as names, phone numbers, email addresses, they're automatically redacted. They can be unredacted with a click of a button, but they start as redacted. And this leads on to the next feature of our system carries a full audit trail. And that means every single click in the platform is monitored and is tracked. And this means management can see what certain people are looking at, make sure they're not viewing something they shouldn't be. And that's obviously really, really key for reporting as well. And then my favorite feature to, when I'm on a client demo maybe to show is the overlay of communications on stock charts. So we can search a conversation between two different people and we can look at the conversation in relation to a certain stock. We can see the time and date the stock was, being talked about and the price of the stock at the time. And that's a really, really cool feature that we have. James, is there anything else you want to add to
that? So in terms of what we've done within the product is we've sat with compliance people and asked them what they wanted. So the key to our system is it's a policy-driven investigation system that happens to pick up every single last bit of email and risk rank them. Communication, sorry, not just email. So things like in-place translation, things like being able to see the raw underlying email, being able to scan attachments and then present attachments back as downloads, being able to listen to phone calls and see a bouncing ball go down the screen, is all because we sat next to a compliance person. They've gone, I'd like to see the conversation look like this. We don't just present an item in a chat, such as some of our competitors do. We actually give you the context of the chat. Who said what, when, how big is this chat? You can scroll up and down the chat. You can translate the chat in place. So the tools that we put in allow you to investigate without too much effort. You can throw things to the market supervision system, bring things back from it without thinking too hard about doing it. In terms of the visualizations that we give you, yeah, we can do it against stock charts. We can export it and give you a zigzag diagram of the direction of communications, all sorts of different ways, so that you as the compliance person can specify, I'm looking for risk. This is how I perceive I want to investigate that risk as I go through it. The fact that you can create a case and grab in emails, phone calls, market data, whatever you want, and tag it into the case, plus put in the letter of complaint and a screenshot that you've taken from a photo, enables you to go and meet your KPIs, because your policy says it should all be in one place. There it is, it's all in one place. You don't have multiple systems to do it. And we do have a full export. So if you need to give stuff up to the law firm, to the regulator, you can click a button and it takes everything that you've done, packages it up, encrypts it, and sends it out. So in terms of the tool set, it is very heavily driven by the compliance user community and what they do.
Thank you, James. We actually have a question about the security within the platform that ensures communications data is kept safe.
There we go. I can bang on about this for hours. So what we do in a cloud environment is we everybody gets their own storage area that's encrypted with an encryption key. So all of your data comes and gets put in that storage bucket. You can have that data back. We don't charge for you to have that data back. There's no stupid data exgestion fee or anything like that. We just give you access to your data if you ever want it back or you want it for other purposes. So it's your data, no exgestion. There it is. There's the data. So that data is stored in a non-public area. It's grabbed in a number of different methods, whether it's email or phone calls or Slack, Zoom, Teams, ICE, whatever it happens to be. We drag it all in and put it in this private area that we can give you access to if you so desire, and we encrypt it with its own key. We then parse that data for content, and that content is bodies, attachments to from a few bits of metadata, and put that into a relevance engine for ongoing analysis. As it's put in, each bit of data is tagged with the ownership. Now, nobody can get into that data store other than through a thing called an API. So the only way you can get into that API is by giving us a set of credentials, and that credentials tags you to your firm. So the data is encrypted all the way through. Any communication is secured with a TLS SSL encryption pair. So wherever it goes, it's encrypted. It's stored segmented. It's automatically aged out after SIS91 rules, although you can keep it for the extended 7 years if you need to, if it's part of an investigation, or we can arrange shorter data living as well. So if you only want to keep the system for investigation for 3 months, we can only have the data live for that period within our system. So in terms of security of the data, that's very secure. All of the AWS S3 protections, all of the different AWS encryption protections apply to the data. For the front end, the only way you can get into the system is if we create you a user account. Every user account has multi-factor and an IP whitelist. So unless we know which IP address you're coming from and you're using multi-factor authentication, you're not getting into the system. So the front end is secure. The front end is a web front end that we provide, which has all of the security. The web front end talks to a back end that then talks to the data and does a whole load of data hygiene and control at that level. So there are multiple points where the restriction in terms of access gets smaller and smaller. And then to the data stores and things like that, everybody that has access has been fully due diligenced through the long form A process that the FCA run, just to ensure that we know everything there is to know about the 2 or 3 people that do have access to the system to maintain it. I hope that answers the question.
I think it did, and I really do believe that you could talk for hours about it. So if anyone wants to see that, we could. I'm sure we could arrange that. If we could just throw the screen to this last slide. That's about all we have time for today. Thank you all so much for giving up your valuable time and listening to us. Talk about communication supervision, and then what we do at Fingerprint. You can reach us at these emails here, and on our LinkedIn. And I look forward to hopefully speaking to a lot of you in the future. Anything from you, James?
Thank you all very much for your time. We obviously exist on multiple media channels. We have a website, www.fingerprint-supervision.com. We have a LinkedIn site. We have our personal LinkedIn bits and pieces. We don't do Facebook because it's rubbish. We don't do Twitter because I don't understand it because I'm old. Other than that, get in touch with Kieran or Brielle, as they really do care about talking to everybody about how we can help you with your compliance supervision. Thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you all.